Welcome to the Korea Water Forum session at the 5th Smart Water Grid International Conference, Understanding Interdependency of Wash and Sustainable Water Environment in the Post-COVID Era. At today's session, we are aiming to provide an overview of recent updates of the global water community in terms of dealing with the wash services aligning with the preserving water environment in this COVID-19 era. Today's speakers, who are the experts having abundant experiences and knowledge on the field, will share their insights on its interconnectivity of water and sanitation as well as protection of the environment, which ultimately affects our daily lives both for humans and nature. Today's session, we invited audiences virtually for 1.5 hours from now. The session will be broadcast live through the YouTube and the Zoom. To begin our session, please join me in welcoming Vice President of Korea Water Forum, Professor Nam-gu. Please, Professor Nam-gu.
Welcome everyone. My name is Nam-gu. I'm Vice President of Korea Water Forum. It is my great pleasure to invite you to this session. The title is Understand the Interdependency Between Wash, Water and Sanitation and Hygiene, and Sustainable Water Environment towards the post-COVID-19 era. Due to COVID-19 outbreak in and outside of Korea, we are having a virtual conference and you can join us anywhere. Before our session begins, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all the speakers. Professor Shabaz Khan, Director of UNESCO Jakarta Office, Dr. Nidal Salim, Director General of Global Institute of Water, Environment and Health, and Ms. Yoo-jung Kim, Senior Development Management Expert of UN Office for Sustainable Development, and Mr. Fani Weda Puditama, Regional Coordinator of Global Water Partnership Southeast Asia Office, and Dr. Kevin Geronima, postdoctoral researcher of Gwangju University. Last but not least, our moderator, Dr. Jung-Won Choi, professor from Seoul National University in Korea. Preparing for this session, I have realized that even the global pandemic is not able to cease our cooperative effort to contribute to the international water community. The water cooperation across the world has been increased in various ways under the common goal to cope with the current crisis. Everyone would agree that health and environmental issues have a significant interdependency with WASH, not only to protect the world population from the global crisis, but also to catalyze partnership recognized in the SDG 6, which is water and sanitation for all, and SDG 17, Global Partnership for Sustainable Development. In this session, we have prepared the 3 expert presentations to understand the WASH services in the COVID-19 pandemic. Your contribution through the questions and suggestions in the following panel discussion would be highly appreciated to get through the current crisis by building a strong partnership water cooperation. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice President, Professor Nam-gu. So to begin our session, I need to invite our moderator for the session, Professor Jung-won Choi from Seoul National University. He's currently in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering of Seoul National University. Please, Professor Choi, the floor is yours for now.
All right, thank you very much for the introduction. Thanks to all the presenters and panelists and the audience for joining this session. I don't want to take away too much time from the presenters, so I just want to have a few just reminders. First, please note for the presenters that the presentation time is about 15 minutes, so please try to keep the time as much as possible. And also for the audiences, all the questions and the further discussion will be held after all the presentations will be done. So we have a time allocated for that. So after the presentation, just keep it out on all the questions, and then we can proceed with Q&A after all the presentations. So without further ado, I would like to start with the first presentation. So first presentation will be by the Professor Shabazz Khan. He's the director of the UNESCO Jakarta office, and he will be giving a presentation on the WASH in the COVID-19 era, Asia-Pacific regional cases. Thank you.
Dear Professor Choi, and we heard excellent remarks from Professor Namkong, Vice President of the Korea Water Forum. I'm very grateful for you to invite me to this meeting. I will be able to show you what WASH means in Asia-Pacific region, where we stand, and then of course with presentations from other colleagues, it will become very clear where we need to focus more. If I can share my screen and show you some slides very quickly, and I will be within my time. So I will be giving an idea, first of all, that WASH is a basic human right since 2010, water and sanitation. So that's very important. First of all, it's a human right. But unfortunately, the H in WASH is not properly understood. So water and sanitation, we have been emphasizing that, and I will show you some of the progress. But hygiene after coronavirus has become very, very important. So here you see the picture of course, water and sanitation and human rights for everybody in Asia Pacific and in the world. And if we have to realize any of the other human rights, all of the human rights, then water is the key. So this is from the United Nations General Assembly. And with coronavirus, we know if we wash our hands, and even soap and water availability at the right place, right time can save lives. Let's look into the people who have been left behind on WASH. So usually the data is available about basic drinking water or basic sanitation services. So if we look into the level of availability for the basic drinking water, maybe it's not so bad. Things have been improving. I will show you data from a few countries from our own region. In general, there is a continuous improvement. There are countries where basic drinking water availability is no more really a challenge, like you can see here, for example, Australia, you can see also like Malaysia, you can see China, but for some countries it's still a challenge, including Pakistan, India, as well as for the Southeast Asia, especially Indonesia. Then if you look into basic sanitation, then basic sanitation, of course, we have challenges with respect to the basic sanitation as well. So water availability is a bit better than sanitation, but hygiene data usually is missing. So let's look into Asia Pacific SDG Gateway, SDG portal, what has been presented by the SCAP. This data is available, by the way, on the SDG Gateway, and many organizations contribute to that. So the first is 6.2.1 indicator, which I would like to draw your attention to the hand washing facilities. So how many hand washing facility percentage of population which has hand washing facilities? First of all, the data is not available for every country. But the data, the way it is aggregated, you can see the hand washing facilities up until 2017 data. This is from the portal from yesterday. We do not have the most recent data, but still hand washing facilities not as widely available as the drinking water and for also the sanitation. So hand washing facilities in common places, availability of soap, that remains a challenge. Also very important for today's discussion, we need to consider open defecation is still a practice. And while the numbers are going down in many countries, open defecation still poses a big challenge. And as you know, with COVID, open defecation spreads the virus as well. Let me focus on a few countries. I will give you examples on these targets, like the safe drinking water. Let's look into Japan, 100%, no problem. Hand washing facilities, 100%, no problem. Look into Australia, my other homeland, drinking water, no problem. But population with basic hand washing facilities, still not 100%. So there are countries which are very advanced, and there are these facilities related to basic hand washing facilities. But even in more advanced countries, the facilities are not available. Let's look into two other very interesting countries. Of course, China was the biggest country in our region and a great economy. So the water availability and the data look static here. I'm sure there may be more data about safely managed drinking water. So it's not 100%, but very good. But the percent of population with hand washing facilities have been increasing over a period of time. So even if, let's say, 10% are missing, and if corona is rated in those areas, that is still a very big challenge. And that also applies to other diseases, not just for the coronavirus itself. So hygiene remains a big challenge. And if you look into the Philippines, in the Philippines, of course, population with safely managed drinking water, still it remains a big challenge for the urban, rural, or as a whole. And also if you look into, and I would like you today to focus on this very important indicator, population with basic hand washing facilities on premises, very big challenge still continuing, and it's not even up to 50% in many cases as well. And there is a big difference between urban and the rural area. So my first conclusion is we have been working hard on water availability and basic drinking water. Sanitation overall is improving, but the facilities from the point of view of basic hand washing facilities is very mixed, and the data for countries, most countries is missing, and small islands and developing states is no difference as well. How much do we spend on the edge of wash, the hygiene? And I'm really not so impressed with our number. It's only 4% of the total wash spending which goes on hygiene. And that's where our challenge is. And if you look into how much we need to invest and how much we need to push, these are the numbers from around the world, WHO recent reports. And I would like to draw your attention that 1 to 21% spending year after year is needed if we have to achieve the 2030 targets. And that's where one nation here from Asia Pacific, Lao PDR, if you look into it, the present level in around 2016 to 2030, you can imagine every year 3% of the acceleration is needed until we reach the 2030 targets. So this is a very big challenge. Hygiene remains a very, very big challenge. The number of countries who have sufficient resources to be able to achieve this target 6.2.1. And if you look into the world, maybe there are countries where there is a lot of money available, but most countries are struggling. The countries which are great, the data is not available. But look into the country, my other homeland, Pakistan, and they need a lot of money to be able to push for the hygiene targets. Only 50% of the money is available. And this is also similar to where I'm living in Indonesia, a nation with more than 260 million people, Pakistan more than 220 million people. So we have a major challenge. So water supply increasing, sanitation improving, hygiene remains a big challenge, and the funding for hygiene very, very limited. So this is the data from the World Water Development Report 2019, and you can see for the Central Asia, Southern Asia, the numbers for the hygiene part, the proportion of people with the hand washing facilities is not so impressive. Anything less than 40%, too close to very good numbers. But Western Asia is still very, very big challenges. And as I said before, in Oceania, with small island developing states would have a big challenge. this picture is a stark reminder. While we have these shanty towns on one side, there are golf courses on the other side. So think about wash, think about environment, but very importantly, think about social inequalities. Social inequalities in terms of hygiene are bigger than ever in Asia Pacific, with more than 60% of world population, the richest individuals and the most poor. So we have this challenge also with the most advanced countries to the least developed countries to very small islands. Also, there are these drivers which we need to carefully understand. The drivers are population growth, urbanization, extreme poverty, income inequalities, and education and employment. The cities are growing very fast. We know we have cities which are mega cities like, for example, Jakarta, Manila, Karachi, and also we have those big challenges of very rapid growth in urban areas. So who are being left behind in this region? They can be anywhere. I gave you the example of Australia as well, the example of Pakistan, the example which are very close to where I am, Indonesia, and of course many small countries like Timor-Leste. So we have to, from the Korea Water Forum, the excellent leadership, we need to push that we must focus on the H part of WASH in the bigger context of integrated water resources management, and how can we help countries accelerate. So I would like to also draw your attention to the socio-economic dimension, the funding gap, and the funding gap from the point of view of the drinking water in terms of billions of dollars, rural and urban, but very importantly, the funding gap, which is sanitation, and the missing link, the hygiene. So the funding gap remains very big, the difference between rich and poor, countries who are more affluent versus the countries who are less affluent. So we have to think very carefully, build back better, and that's where investment into WASH, investment into integrated water resources management, investment overall for every dollar we spend in water, maybe the returns are more than $7, and we need to continue to push that green recovery must have water as the starting point. So that's really very, very critical for a recommendation if it comes from this forum today. Also, very importantly, we need to think about the H part, the whole WASH, with the right subsidies, structured tariff, blended finance, the investment from the governments. Most of the countries don't even have 50% of what is needed to achieve the hygiene targets. And the official development assistance, that's where COICA's role is very critical. How can we push more for the hygiene part of the WASH? And also the public-private partnership, the commercial entities, and the private sector, the effort towards the WASH. And the starting point should be the H part of WASH. And coming back to the work we are doing in this region under the leadership of Korea, the Asia Water Council, as well as Korea Water Forum, I think we have been emphasizing good governance in terms of the water management, the invisible part of the water cycle. I think good governance, we need to bring the human rights approach. And human rights approach is water, sanitation, and hygiene. If there is no hygiene, there is no health. So I think this is a very important part of our consideration. Let me draw to the conclusion. So my first conclusion, as I mentioned, WASH is part of the basic human rights, but H is missing from the data, H is missing from the investment, and thank you very much for Korea Water Forum to focusing today on WASH. Then also there is insufficient funding. The national targets, if they have to be achieved, we need to have continuous investment up to 2030, more than 3% to 21% year on year we need to spend. The SDG target 6.2.1, which is related to hygiene, which is related to making sure there is safety for everyone from the point of view of human health. So that's where I think let us put a recommendation that let's focus on H part of WASH very carefully, and of course in the context of good governance and the whole environment. So we need to have safe, affordable, reliable drinking, sanitation, and hygiene is part of the basic human rights. Billions have been left out in the world, and Asia Pacific is a region which has billions by itself. Also, very importantly, we need to tailor our recommendations to the level of the targets and the indicators. And usually, everyone is thinking about 6.5.1, the targets related to integrated water resource management. There is no integrated water resource management unless we achieve the hygiene targets. Very importantly, we need to think about disadvantaged people living in the slums, where investment into hygiene makes good sense. Rather than investing only into vaccines, we must invest into washing facilities in the premises close to the people where they are. And also, very importantly, while COVID-19 is still going on, and there are many challenges everywhere, we need to focus back on human rights, bring human right to wash, human right to water, and in the context of the bigger environment, and bring this invisible part of integrated water resource management, which is the good governance. And that's where we need to get rid of the vested interest and go towards the practices which bring public-private partnership, South-South cooperation, and the role which the Water Forum has been playing very importantly. And we need very strong recommendations, and that's where we need the United Nations system, the goodwill of the governments like the Republic of Korea, the Global Water Partnership, the work which is coming from the academia, to bring this missing edge into the minds of people. With that, I thank you, and thank you again for listening, and will be happy to contribute to discussion today. Thank you. Thumbs up, Mika.
Thank you, Professor Khan, for an excellent presentation, and especially highlighting on the hygiene as the sort of a missing problem that in many Asian countries need to improve on. Especially, he has highlighted that in approaching that, consideration of social inequality as well as human rights are very important. And to do that, the government and the international organizations' role, as well as the private sector's participation is important. Okay, we thank the presentation once more, and then we would like to move on to our next presentation, which will be by Dr. Nidal Salim, from Director General of the Global Institute of Water, Environment, and Health. And he will be giving an impact of the water and sanitation in sustainable water environment as the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Actually, it's too late here. It's around 2 o'clock in the morning. It's fine. Actually, it's a pleasure to see you again through this virtual meeting, and I'm going to present today about the impact of COVID in the water sector. So I have to, I don't know, can you see my slides here? Is it available? Excuse me, I have sharing. I think I have a problem sharing the slides, you know. So can you see the slides or no? No.
So far, we cannot see the slides. Can you?
Yeah.
Click the green one.
Where?
Cancel that, and then just click the green with the arrow on the top.
Share, yeah,
Just click on that.
Okay. Now it's clear, it's okay, yes?
Yep, we can see your slides if you can. Yep. And if you can make it into the presentation now, maybe that might help.
Yeah.
All right, there we go.
Okay. So I'm going to speak today about the impact of COVID-19 in the water sector. So we will start first to speak that, as Dr. Shahbaz said at the beginning, that the most impact comes to the most vulnerable people who have no access to adequate wash or without social and economical safety nets, who are hit the hardest, who are hit in this pandemic. Actually, if we also again turn back to the maps which was presented by Dr. Shahbaz Khan, we saw that most of these areas are located in Africa, part of Asia, and we have also in South America. So these are the most people who are infected by this pandemic, the highest actually, I would say. I will come to more details in this issue. And the impacts, marginalized people already affected by poverty, disability, ill health, social exclusion, and humanitarian crisis, including mainly refugees, migrants, and internally displaced people. And those who are living in urban slums or camps and with weak or no health system. Hygiene is one of the main points also here which they miss, because sometimes water, sanitation, and hygiene is one of the major gaps they have. And management of future water needs to stand out as an urgent, tangible, and fully resolvable issue. If we come to COVID-19, I think we have to move this slide. If we speak about the COVID-19, the main impact comes to the health. And once we speak about the health, the most grave determinant impact is the provision and sustainable, if not adequate, mitigated. And the most important is the wash. Wash is the key for dealing and solving the problem of pandemic. It's not solving, of dealing with the pandemic, we call it. It's water, sanitation, and hygiene. So the main key for solving or reducing the impact is as hygiene, but to use the hygiene also we need water and we need sanitation. And this make a type of impact in the water supply demand issue. I'll come to that later. And it has to be equitable access to wash commodities and services to extend for all without any discrimination between nations and between community. It must be based on the basic human rights. If once we used to speak about, because now we are in the decade of action, we used to speak in 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, where the title is leaving no one behind. But until now, I will say until 2019, before we start the pandemic, we have 736 million people who already deprived of the most basic human needs, such as water and food, due to extreme poverty. So poverty is a key actor in leaving people behind. Within the pandemic, this risk increase hit by additional 100 million people. These are UN figures during the Human Rights Council, 45th session of the Human Rights Council. If we come to the water sector again, if we go to goal number 6, we have 6 targets and 2 complementary, which is the main of implementation. If we look to the pandemic, it influenced each one of them. Number 1, drinking water. When we come to drinking water, we have a direct impact in the water supply demand. We'll come to that later. Sanitation and hygiene. Lack of hygiene or lack of awareness and lack of facilities in sanitation. Water quality, water use efficiency, because this also, the efficiency and the management of the water resources is a key factor in dealing with the pandemic, as well as the ecosystem. And once we come to the means of implementation, we have the cooperation and capacity development, because most of the people at the beginning with the crisis, when it started, they don't know how to do, what to do, even governments, which needs a lot of cooperation and capacity development. And the local participation was very limited at the beginning, because I would say that preventing people the freedom of movement and lockdowns, it impacts everyone, and it makes the local participation, okay, they participate in different things in the daily life, but in the water sector, local participation was limited. Coming to the primary impact and the socio-economical impact to the water, to the wash. The first thing which we have is in the primary impacts, we have a decline in the quantity and quality of wash. We have a decline in access and increase in the prices, because tariffs was increasing in many different parts of the world, especially in the developing countries where they don't have facilities. Prices was increasing, tariffs was increasing for wash commodities and services, due to rupture in global supply chains caused by restrictions or no movement. Then we have a type of increase in interruptions in wash assistance, because sometimes we have interruption in water supply, we have interruption in electricity, and this also increased the infection of COVID-19 humanitarian situation. Then we have the inability to promote hand washing and clean in water-stressed context. We have the decline in quality of response due to the restricted or no movement because of the limitation of movement of people, with the quality assurance by essential staff and the humanitarian worker. We have divergence of donor funding even in the water sector, from ongoing WASH humanitarian response to support COVID-19 response, even from, I would say, not only ongoing WASH, ongoing WASH, because WASH we have water and sanitation and hygiene, 3 of them. So there was a type of movement in the funding and concentration in COVID in different parts. And then we have the corruption due to the considered economic situation. When we come to the socio-economical impacts, I cannot say everything because we have the decline and increase of WASH commodity and severity in a global supply chain restriction because of the restriction of movement. Second, we have a type of increase in disease outbreaks and malnutrition due to weak WASH, and somehow in limited access to arrive to the field of agriculture to supply the market demand, etc. And we have a type of decline in the financial viability due to the services loss of subsidies and the income loss, limiting by the ability to pay for WASH. Then we have a decline in national governments in delivering WASH services and leading to tension and sometimes feeling insufficient. Then we have the divergence and the prioritization of funding away from WASH. We have again shift in donor funding from the existing commitment and the priorities, such as the grant bargain, resulting in a significant reduction in the overall funding. This is a very important point because here in the shift in the donor funding, we have a type of delay in achieving the Millennium Development because we were speaking in a decade of action started from 2018 to 2028. So we have to start supporting the water, WASH I would say in general, but water and sanitation and hygiene in active project on the ground. Since 1 year, I would say, since last year until now, most of the fundraising is not arriving or it's not going directly to the field. Everything is concentrated in response to COVID. So we are working in a plan of responding, but not according to strategy and policy plan. And this makes a shift and divert for the fund, which influence directly the water sector. If we come to the impact, the main impact also in water could be presented in the water supply and demand, because this is the main balance for water, and it could be at various scale of problems. It could be in individual scale, and here once we speak about individual scale, we have to speak and highlight about the impact of individuals, especially in the developing countries. Here we are speaking about old persons, we are speaking about women, we are speaking about children, and disabled persons, because all these people, from a humanitarian aspect, they have a type of lack of support in this pandemic. They didn't have access most of the time for the water and hygiene and sanitation services, where we have most of the people who are infected and even many people who are died because of this problem. The second, if we come to the community in the catchment also, we have a problem in the management and in the water utilities, because to supply the demand, and in the access to the water resources, in the affordability of the water and water, sanitation and hygiene, because we are speaking about WASH, 3 of them, and the equity of distribution, because at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a community who were already left behind. It's another lifting behind in addition to what we have left behind before in the Sustainable Development Agenda. Then we come to the community base. We have the water utility and supply, because because of the lockdown and no freedom for movement, limitation of movement, most of the employees couldn't manage to arrive to the water supply utilities, or they didn't arrive to the treatment plants. This also creates another problem in the supply demand. Again, when you come to the various scale problem, we have a problem of revenue, and we'll come to that later also. In the tariff is increasing in most of the areas, especially in developing countries, and this puts pressure on the most vulnerable people. And also we have a type of the customer behavior. So it's a type of competing interest even again between across scale and across sectors and the SDG, because when we speak about WASH is integrated with all items or all agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals. Here in the pandemic we have water pressure, and the water comes to all aspects in urbanization, waste, solid waste, because of the freedom of movement, lockdown, all these aspects were infected negatively, and they create other problems for the society and community. Here it's another figure to speak about the impact of COVID-19 in water sector. So the first thing that we have low access, reliability, and the quality of water, sanitation, and hygiene present in risk in developing countries. The second thing, we have large cities also face risks stemming from population density and enforcement, because there could be a problem in supplying the water to all these people. And according to the recent World Bank report, they are speaking about pointing to the compared living condition, inadequate public services, especially inadequate waste management and sanitation. This refer back to the slide which I presented before about the pressure coming to all aspects and in the large development market cities. And then coming to the supply demand figure, as I said, it's changed. Water allocation are changing because we have an increase in water supply for domestic use, because people were staying at home, using water at home more than other aspects. In industry, the water allocation is decreased, and this also influence the investment and influence the revenue which comes from the industry. In agriculture also we have a type of changing in the water supply and demand. And then we have a type of deeper revenue loss in projected across the whole water supply chain, including operators, technology companies, contractors, chemical suppliers, and consultants. Again, we are continuing in the combat. Water utilities operation are typically funded by customers. And since customers are insufficient and there is no cost, therefore the water utilities require support from other sources, because they have lack in the access, because the clients are not able to cover the needs for the water utilities or the costs. In the global scale, the partial suspension of water billing for low-income users and Mauritanians, I couldn't have what we have, but we have here the common response to the crisis. There must be a measure to be adopted for areas of cost. And then we have determinants on the exhibition forum utility bill payments for vulnerable groups. We have the moratorium on cutting on the water supply. These were justified by the importance of hygiene and the treating with the virus, and suspensions of meters reading and invoicing. So this is the message, what the message we can get from this impact. I put them into 3 items just to finalize this slide. We call it pledge, approach, and solution. In the pledge, we said that in 2015, with the Sustainable Development Goal, the General Assembly of the United Nations pledged to leave no one behind and to reach the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. In this decade, the decade of action and delivery, we must uphold this pledge, and we have to know how to deal with these things in a very strategic and policy way, where we have to deal with the COVID and the response to the COVID, but we don't have to leave the other thing behind and leave the other people suffering from other impacts. The approach, as the world embarks on the largest socio-economic recovery since the Second World War, Trillions of dollars were lost. We must do more to reach those left behind, which means that there must be subsidies and there must be additional budget going to cover the gaps in the societies, because with the pandemic again, in the impact, high rate of unemployment people, especially among youth, and even not only youth, but also families, many families, parents who don't have salaries, because in the developing countries, in most of the developed, there is no social recovery. So these families who don't have salaries, also they don't have income, they start to have other type of problems developing within the society, like violence, like being aggressive, people being nervous, all these things, psychological and physiological problem came with this pandemic. To go to the solution, as the UN said, that we must find durable solution on debate to create space for needing investment to support people and communities who were already struggling to survive. I think each country, and this is what we start to see, that countries are moving toward, but I think they're still not acting in a good way, because there are still many people who are lagging behind. And our message also in the solution is to encourage the government and to encourage the official development assistance, ODA, to forward their money, not only to respond to COVID. Respond to COVID, yes, is the top, and now everything is related to respond to COVID. But also put money on the ground, put money on the project, because one of the main impact which comes with the pandemic, we discovered that the countries cannot continue relying on other funds coming from. They have to develop everything by themselves. Each country must have a type of sufficient resources in agriculture, in water, in food, in everything. And one of the main impact also we could have, and we can see in this pandemic, that the trade, because if you come to the water and sanitation, I speak about water now more than speaking about H and sanitation, hygiene and sanitation. If we speak about water, most of the trade development and international relation and security developed between countries in different parts. It depends somehow in the trade depends on water, because in the water we have the hidden part, which is called the water footprint, which is the water as a good which goes from one country to another, because of the limited movement of the travel and plane and trades. The trade market were influences, and this makes also a type of change in the revenue and in the relation. By this slide, I think with the limitation of time, I will say this is what I can say for this meeting of today, and I will be happy to join you by the end of the meeting for any discussion. Thank you very much, and wishing you a nice continuation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Selling. The presentation focused on the impact of the COVID-19 on WASH, as well as the broader water sector, and also how that would influence subsequently to the people, especially those who are most vulnerable to the pandemics. Okay, so we thank the presentation once more, and then next we have a presentation by Ms. Yoo-jung Kim. And she's a Senior Development Management Expert in United Nations Office of Sustainable Development, and her presentation will focus on the understanding the interlinkage between WASH and water environment as a cross-cutting tool responding to post-COVID era. So without further ado, Ms. Yoo-jung Kim.
Thank you, Professor. And good morning, everyone. It is a great pleasure to be here at the Smart Water Grid International Conference. And I would like to thank the organizers and all of you for taking part in this event. Well, let me start my presentation by introducing the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. To confront challenges like inequality, poverty, and a climate crisis, our governments as United Nations member states crafted an agenda to set us on track to global progress. 193 member states adopted this global agenda in 2015 to make the year 2030 the best it can be. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development was developed as a universal, interdependent agenda that touches on all aspects of our lives. The 2030 Agenda includes 17 sustainable development goals, acting like a roadmap that seeks to improve societies everywhere. It starts with no poverty, and it includes zero hunger, good health, education, gender equality, energy, work, cities, climate action, and protecting the ecosystem. Not one country, rich or poor, has achieved all of the goals, so there is something for all of us to aspire to. And water and sanitation has its own goal, Goal 6, ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. And this reflects the increased attention on water and sanitation issues in the global political agenda. And each goal has a series of targets, as Dr. Salim already introduced. SDG 6 has a few targets as well. 6.1 addresses access to safe and affordable drinking water. 6.2 addresses access to sanitation and hygiene. 6.3 is about improving water quality. 6.4 is on how we can use water efficiently. And 6.5 addresses integrated water resources management. And 6.6 mentions water-related ecosystems. And SDG 6 is closely interlinked with other SDGs, so achievements in WASH directly contributes to other goals such as health, education, gender equality, and ecosystem-related goals. There has been substantial progress made on SDG 6. For example, between 2016 and 2017, donors increased their aid commitments to the water sector by 37%, and between 2000 and 2017, the proportion of the global population using safely managed sanitation services increased from 28 to 45%. However, despite this progress, billions of people, mostly in rural areas, still lack these basic services. For example, 4.2 billion people still lack safely managed sanitation, and 2 in 5 healthcare facilities worldwide have no soap and water or alcohol-based hand rub. 3 billion people worldwide lack basic hand washing facilities at home, and moreover, almost half of schools worldwide lack hand washing facilities. So this lack of wash facilities and services is especially problematic in the time of pandemic, because the hygiene factor of wash is a vital first line of defense against COVID-19, especially in the absence of a vaccine for COVID-19. So closing these gaps is critical to providing effective health care and to containing the spread of COVID-19. And it is also worth noting that meeting the frequent hand washing requirements may be especially challenging in the regions with very high water stress like Central and Southern Asia and Northern Africa. And this requirement also increases the amount of wastewater. So wastewater acts like a natural vehicle for pollutants like nutrient, chemical, and also pathogens. Yet large amounts of wastewater are released in the environment without treatment or adequate treatment. And this trend poses serious risk to the environment and human health, as communities are exposed to polluted water or raw sewage that contain bacteria and viruses. These pathogens can spread through the fecal or root and affect a large community within a short time. And traces of COVID-19 were found in wastewater worldwide, including US and many countries in Europe. And this fact does not necessarily mean that COVID-19 can be transmitted through wastewater, but it is true that COVID-19 highlights the need for wastewater treatment facilities and adequate sanitation. In addition to that, the fact the virus is found in wastewater opens the door to huge opportunities for the response to this pandemic or similar future ones. By monitoring wastewater, we can understand the magnitude of the infection and take any measures needed, such as lockdowns, to isolate certain communities. Another important aspect of interlinkages between WASH and water environment in the COVID-19 era I would like to address is that wastewater is also a vehicle for solid waste. Use of single-use products including plastic cups, bottles, and medical supplies like masks and gloves have greatly increased. And as you all know, plastic pollution, including microplastic, is already serious. So extra loads of solid waste discarded can be carried by wastewater or stormwater and threaten health of not only human but also wild animals and the whole ecosystem. So what actions can be done to respond and rebuild from COVID-19? We need to urgently invest in water sanitation hygiene services, infrastructure, supplies, and training for all frontline health workers. And we also need to embed WASH data and monitoring in national standards and processes for quality of care and pandemic preparedness. And development partners and multilateral organizations should urgently increase financial support for hygiene services for communities and also for frontline health workers. As a way forward, reusing wastewater, especially gray water, can reduce water stress and increase water availability. And we also must seek out a guideline, national, international, and local guidelines to adequately monitor epidemic risks in the water system and build the capacity of supporting institutions. Also, investment and research are necessary for a continual supply of WASH to communities and to support the wastewater sector. We need to know more about the relationship between a pandemic and water so that we can further improve the water system. A partnership should be a core principle. Partnership between private sectors, financial institutions, and local communities is a solution to sustainable wastewater management and response to COVID-19. So our office organized a webinar this September on closing the WASH gap and had a chance to hear such actions by Uganda. Uganda Local Government Association has promptly responded to the crisis through an effective provision of WASH. First, they set up 300 water points to promote free hand washing. And second, they engaged in a public-private partnership to provide low-cost water services to more than 30,000 residents. And third, they consistently provided water to low-income families by suspending an act of disconnection of water supplies at no payment. Such actions and efforts received attention and boosted further partnerships with UN partners. And these kind of efforts can create a virtuous cycle of solving WASH problems. To fundamentally solve the current problem, I want to emphasize that we need to think in systems. Human health is not isolated from animal health or environmental health. They are all interlinked, and there are clearly co-benefits to integrate them in one health approach. And we also need to see water sanitation and wastewater management in the context of one health approach to better respond to the post-COVID-19 era. So in conclusion, COVID-19 can be an opportunity for adequate provision of WASH, and we need to know more about the relationship between water and COVID. But we need to act now. we must move forward with strong alliance, system, and investment. Over 70 years ago, Sir Winston Churchill said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." And today, UN Secretary General has reminded us of the importance of action in times of crisis. Everything we do during and after this crisis must be with a strong focus on building more equal, inclusive, and sustainable economies and societies that are more resilient in the face of pandemics, climate change, and the many other global challenges we face. I hope today's discussion here also contributes to the action needed to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. I think I have more slides here. Yes, thank you. So lastly, I would like to note that our office looks forward to exchanging more with you on water and the SDGs. UNOSD was established in 2011 by the United Nations and the government of the Republic of Korea. The purpose of UNOSD is to support UN member states in planning and implementing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, including the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We focus on strengthening knowledge exchange, capacity building, providing research and advisory services, and on partnerships. This includes partnerships between the academia, civil societies, private sector, and government. So if you need more information, please visit our website, Facebook page, Twitter, and YouTube channel. Thank you very much, and my best wishes of good health to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kim, for excellent presentation. She has highlighted that for COVID-19, the WASH serves as a first line of defense, but then after that, the appropriate wastewater, solid water management, and all of those things are necessary, even more so than before. And then, there's a really important role of the agencies and other government organizations to play a role in managing post this crisis era. Okay, so with that, we'd like to move on to our next presentation by Mr. Fani Redaktitama. He's a regional coordinator of the GWP's SEA office, and he will talk on the wash and water environment in Southeast Asia.
Thank you, Professor Jungku Choi, for the opportunity. Thank you for the all the previous resource person that already covered a lot of things. So being the last presenter, so it's a bit difficult. But I'm trying to see how we can contribute from a bit different angle. So let me share my presentation with you. I hope you can see my presentation. Okay, so I'm going to discuss this topic about wash and the environment, water environment, but from the perspective of how we are going to apply this IWM principle, because this is our global mandate, this for the sustainable water environment. So let me start with this slide first. So when we are talking about wash, actually wash is one part of the themes under the IWM, because in my own opinion, any activities that have that use water, have impact on water or impacted by water, must be managed in an integrated manner to ensure sustainable development. So this is just the practical terms that I would like to propose to everybody. So when we are talking about water, especially integrated water management, so it covers everything. So integrated water resource management is not just dealing with the resources, but water resources, but it deals with everything. And wash is one of the things. As you can see here, if you are talking about IWM and we are talking about water for ecosystem, this is one. And then the second one is water for people. That means you are talking about wash, yeah? Water and sanitation and hygiene. And then you are also talking about water for economic and development activity, because you need to do something for the economic activity and also for the development activity. And then the last thing that we propose here is that we are also thinking about the water-related disaster risk reduction and the emergency response, because we have that in our life. So if we are talking about integrated approach, then we should think about everything. So since we are not talking about wash, which should not be detached from the other things. So that is my first argument in this for this slide. And then the second thing is that I want to challenge everybody a bit. When we talk about water governance, it seems like water governance is one big bundle of water governance. But actually, if you look at these things, each of these things, including water for people, or we are talking about wash, they have their own water governance. Because we call this mini IWRMs, and each mini IWRM, they have this water governance. And it doesn't necessarily, each water governance is linked with the other water governance. That is also the problem that we face. So this is something that in the beginning I want to lay out, so everybody understand when we are talking about wash, there are other things that we need with its own water governance that we need to think about, and we need to think about how we are going to align or synchronize with the other, so we are not working in silo. So this is the main point that I want to share with you all. So and then we are talking about COVID-19 pandemic, and we know, so Henk Oking, the Special Envoy for International Water Affairs from the Netherlands, the Kingdom of Netherlands, said that for many, the first line of defense is out of reach. This is very true, because when we have this pandemic, the first thing, the country with the most severe challenge is the country with the high water scarcity. This is one. And then those countries that has low access of water supply and sanitation, they also hit also the hardest. And then places with the frequent disaster, particularly water-related disaster, this is also the places that will be hit very hard, because they have to deal with many risks, not only COVID, but then also dealing with the risk of disaster. And then the last, not the last day, but the next, the place that has the hardest, the most severe challenges during this COVID is the place with the conflict, because when you have conflict, there are many things that it is very hard to get, and so especially for the water and sanitation access. So when we are talking about water, it creates a different level of complication, and we need to really address that since the beginning. So, but not many countries actually put some priority on these basic services. Okay. But let's see first what happened before the COVID, the pandemic. So, as you see here, let me close this first, this way. Okay. As you see here, the hygiene baseline before the COVID-19. So 4 in 10 households in Southeast Asia, they do not have dedicated place for washing hand washing with soap facilities and water on premises, yes. And then the same case with the school. This is 5 out of 10 schools. And even we have the program on wash in school, but still it doesn't catch up with the current reality that 5 in 10 schools still do not have this hand washing facilities with soap. And then also in hospital, we have 1 in 4 hospitals do not have functional hand hygiene facilities with soap and water on hand or hand sanitizer. So if these places at home, at school, at hospital, and we are not talking yet about the public facilities, the public facilities in the public space, then we are actually before the COVID itself, we are already facing a huge problem on that. But that is the fact that we have now. And then if you look again, you see it here in the household, the hand washing or the hygiene practices receive very low priority at home, at school, not to mention if you are outside in the public space. And you can see also that the availability of water before the COVID even do not seem to be limiting the factor for having hand washing facility with soap. So before the COVID, what I'm trying to say here is even before the COVID, we have already issues with this wash. So then we have the COVID and things change so fast, and for some it seems like it is too late to catch up. But I hope that would be not the case. I hope that this crisis, we can learn a lot of things, and we can prioritize our development priority on wash especially. So based on that information, I would like to have to propose at least three issues, three topics that we have to focus on in the future. The first is the water governance integration among all things. As I mentioned before, water for ecosystem, water for people, water for economic and development activities, water-related disaster. They have different water governance, and if we want to work together to sustain this water environment, to have a sustainable water environment, and to have a sustainable development, then we need to see again, to revisit again these water governances, and then try to see where we can try to manage this in an integrated manner. So that is the first thing that I would like to propose, because it is very basic if we are talking about the development in the water sector. Everything has to be started with the water governance. So do you have the sufficient water governance to do everything that we need to do? That is the first one. The second one that I would like to propose, COVID, do not wait for water-related disaster to stop or the other way around. Yeah? The other challenges do not wait until COVID stops. So disaster, floods, drought, land subsidence, earthquakes, tsunamis, all these kind of things, typhoon, what just happened in super typhoon that just happened in the Philippines, they do not stop until COVID is, received. No, it happens simultaneously, and then because of all COVID also, then we have the other risk of economic crisis. So we have triple risk here. So everything becoming very complicated. So if we don't have a very good water governance in everything, for example, for water-related disaster risk reduction and emergency response governance there, then I'm sure that now we are, how you say, not defeated, but we have to struggle a lot to be on top of things. So this is something that I would like to propose, because we tend to focus on one thing, but then forget on the other thing. So it's supposed to be handled, managed comprehensively. And the last issues that I want to propose here to put on the table to get the attention of everybody is the wastewater management. With COVID, we have the water consumption increase, and that would lead. The most obvious thing is that the increase of wastewater volume is also very significant. And even before COVID, we have problem with wastewater management. For example, in Indonesia, if we talk about wastewater management, the sewage, fecal sludge management, we in Indonesia, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have 129 wastewater treatment plant, and one wastewater treatment plant only covers maximum 50,000 households, and we have 250 260 million people, and 129 is not going to be enough to treat the wastewater. And if I'm not mistaken, from that 129 wastewater treatment plant, only 37% is working very well. So you can see there is this huge problem that we are facing right now, even more during the COVID-19. So we have to focus our effort in several places at once. So WASH, yes, this is something important, but what is the value change of WASH? You know, the water for ecosystem, and then water for economic activity, and then the WASH itself produces wastewater. So many things comes at once. So this is something that a real challenge, but we need to face it, of course. Now, I have explained about the water governance points of integration. I have raised this in the previous slide. So maybe there are several priority in each thing, but for example, I would like to say here, for the water for ecosystem, maybe the priority here is water conservation. And then water for people, access to adequate, safe water and supply, safe water supply and sanitation. For water for economic and development, maybe the priority there is food security and energy security from hydropower. And then for the water-related disaster risk reduction, we are focused on, we have priority on flood and drought. But you see here, we have to see things as not in silo, but as overlap with each other. So we need to start thinking how we are going to improve this water governance points of integration. We need to know, but in order to understand the points of integration, we need to know what is the business process of each thing. So let me show you this, the business process for water conservation. This is just an illustration from my side. If you are talking about water conservation, then you are talking about water sources conservation, and then you're talking about water allocation, water usage permit, water distribution, and then you are talking about wastewater management. So those that I circled in red, this is the points of integration that we need to discuss with the people who have the authority on the water governance for water for people. So if I click again here, the next slide, for water supply, we are dealing with the water source extraction permit. So that means we are dealing with this, that number 3, water usage permit. So that is, I suppose, to put a circle there. But here is the point of integration with the water for ecosystem. And then you have the raw water transmission, production, storage, distribution, and then access and wastewater there. So that is another point of integration if we are going to integrate the water governance with the other things. So you see this, there is this points of integration between water governance. So this is important if we are going to talk about water management to support this sustainable development. Okay, now this is just I want to show you how we usually analyze what happens in one thing. So we have the business process of water supply, for example, but I cannot put everything into the matrix, so I just put this arrow to show you that there is this business process. So in order for us to deliver access to safe water, it started with the water source extraction permits, and then the raw water transmission, and so on, as I showed in the previous slide. But then, when we are trying to analyze whether we have a sufficient water governance, then we look at the points of analysis here. First, we look at the regulation point of analysis. We would like to know, for water source extraction permit, what is the ideal situation? What is the ideal regulatory framework that you have, that you need to be put in place? And then and then you compare it with the existing one. And then and then after and then you can compare, you can identify the gap. And then based on that gap, you can identify what are the current efforts that you have done in order to address the gap. And then is it effective or not? If it's not effective, then you need a further effort. And then on the further effort, what kind of effort that you need also to close the gap. And then you have to identify who is going to take that effort to implement the effort, and then when is it in short term, medium term, long term, and then how much for each of these effort, how much money that you need. So these are the point of the kind of analysis that we do to see only in one thing, and then after that we have to see the cohesiveness between the other thing. So this is just an example for everybody to know that this is a complex issue, and we should be very careful in analyzing, not only focusing on WASH, but we have to take the whole issues in one plate. So again, I just want to emphasize, WASH is important, yes. It is the first line of defense, especially during the pandemic, but you will not have WASH if you don't have the other things is working also, the water source conservation, for example. So we need to identify the points of integration between the water sources, analyze the level of integration, and then work on how to improve the level of integration. So with that, I want to conclude that the way forward during the COVID-19, in the short term, first, I think we need to evaluate the level of water governance integration between WASH and different things. This is one thing. The second thing, in the short term also, you don't need to wait until 2030 to have universal access. You have to do it fast, and you have to sacrifice the other, of course. But this is a basic services. So as Professor Sabat has already mentioned, this has to be put first. So everybody has sufficient access to water and sanitation. And then in the midterm, then we can talk about the integrated water management plan. And then also about the water demand, water demand management, because we need to do that from time to time. And then also in the long term, we need to see whether this water law is one of the main superior laws to be referenced by other laws, because we have so many laws in the country, and then every law has their own, ego. So we need to structure also, if we are talking about regulatory framework, what is the highest, the superior law that can be referenced by other law? And I think water law is one. And then, of course, higher funding for water management, as mentioned by the previous speaker. So I will end my presentation there. I hope it makes sense, everybody, and I wish you a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Titama, for an excellent presentation. I think he addressed the really difficulty and challenges in how to sort of develop the integrated water governance, especially in this COVID-19 era, because it's not just about focusing on how to sort of develop a good wash system for the COVID-19, but also other water issues that has been there, which are still problems in many South Asian and also other Asian countries. Okay, so with that, we have concluded all 4 presentations, and now we have time for a short amount of time for the Q&A and discussion. And right now, I think we have about 40 participants joining in through the Zoom session. And right now we have 5 panelists, the 4 presenters, as well as the Dr. Kevin Geronimo, he's a postdoc at Gwangju University, also joining in as a panelist. So first, I think since we already had some of the questions that's been asked via the Q&A and chatting system in the Zoom, I would like to start with those. And so I think the first question was to Professor Shahbaz Khan. And the question is that, are there hurdles or any risk factors in the process of seeking sustainable cooperation between sectors, between water, sanitation, and health? So Professor Khan, if you can share your insights on this first, and if any other panelists also want to join in, I think we can do that too.
Thank you very much, Professor. So, the first, I think, most important part is that we have not really considered the full implications of WASH. So governments have so many priorities, provision of roads, for example, provision of basic health, the dispensaries, the hospitals, the drinking water, better air quality, because there's so many of those priorities by the government on a day-to-day basis, the political economy prevails. And that's where we have really have lagged behind, as I showed you on the indicator 6.2.1. So usually we go to the things which maybe are under the area of one ministry only, and how it links with the Ministry of Health, for example, how it links with the local governments, for example. So we have coordination issues in the countries. We have also the issues of what are the most important priorities. Of course, we need to have drinking water on a daily basis, but at the same time, we need to make sure we are healthy. And that's where, as I showed you with the data as well, the hygiene part has not been given the due consideration. And water sector is dominated by engineers. I'm an engineer myself. We need more health professionals. We need people from the medical science, the people from the biological sciences to come and work with the water people, and we need to have integration of the Ministries of Health and Ministries of Water Resources and Environment. Integrated water resource management in its true sense will only work when we have the proper coordination at the national, provincial, local government. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If anyone else wants to join in to this one?
Yes, maybe just a short one. I second the answer from Professor Shabazz. But if you are talking about priority, we need to now realize, everything that we have built, especially for the government, everything that we have built with this COVID, everything seems to be, almost everything has wiped away. Yeah? And then it is severely wiped away because we don't have the strong foundation of development, and that strong foundation of development is one of them is the basic infrastructure, and water and sanitation is one of them. So if you don't prioritize your foundation, and you build a house, it's like you have built a house on the sand without this wash. But if you have wash as a priority, you are building your house on a stone, rock. That everything happens, you have the first line of defense in place. So that would be my answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think this would be also sort of nice to continue on with the next question we have too, which is then, considering that we have all these different things that we need to consider, what might be a sort of best way, a good way to allocate the investment for a WASH? Is it going to be through the international organizations, or should it be directly to the local site? How can we sort of make a priority for allocation of these kind of budgets? And I don't know who might be the best one to answer this, but if any of you want to step in, that would be great. Maybe.
Quickly. I will read later, please.
Sure. Dr. Sally, maybe?
I put my point, and it might be, you can. Actually, it's a type of integration between different actors, how to allocate the money and to allocate funds. Here is where we have to build a real partnership to work together to achieve something in this field. I think we have to give more attention and to give more responsibility in this time for NGOs who are working on the ground. Because if you come to all results which comes, or what we have in the discussion, the priorities, it's a type of engineering work, it's a type of infrastructure, it's a type of taking actions. All these things have to be on the ground. Governments have to take a role, international organizations have to take a role, but dealing with the most vulnerable people in societies, mostly, especially these are in remote areas, the easiest to arrive to these people and make them satisfied, this is my own opinion, but is to work with local NGOs and international NGOs who have good access and good communication with these people on the ground, to satisfy their needs and to make them, to secure them, because they are the most infected people in this pandemic, and even in the whole development agenda. Because even I remember last year in Korea International Water Week, and the year before, and the year before in the leadership roundtable discussion, we always focus on the most vulnerable people and say actions have to be taken on the ground and to build real partnership. Real partnership to include everyone. I think it's a type of integration, but we have to give more attention and more focus to the NGOs who are working on the ground.
Thank you.
If I can add further to what Dr. Nidal has said, we are missing a very important link. We are very good at the global level. We understand there are 17 SDGs. We know the SDG number 6. We know the IWRM. But we have to bring it down to the local government level. Like the level of, for example, Daegu, the level of, for example, a city in Pakistan like Jhelum, to Samarang in Indonesia. That's the missing link, that how do we translate the right kind of, you can say, targets and need to move to indicator level. We cannot now in 2020 talk only about the goal or the target. We need to go to the indicator level. That's number one. Secondly, we need to now change our financing model. The financing model of ODA coming from somewhere, supporting a certain area, going away, maybe can set up a pilot or something which can be catalytic, but not necessarily changing the life of the people. To change the life of the people, we need to think about innovative financing. And I want to give you one example for this forum today, and I'm sure some colleagues who are from Muslim part of the brethren for the people, there is a very important mechanism in Islamic innovative financing. It's called zakat. Everyone pays a part of their income, about 2.5%, to help the poor, people who have been left behind. We need those kind of mechanisms to feed into water, sanitation, and hygiene. By the way, in terms of the hygiene, in a mosque, 5 times a day, people are going there and cleaning themselves and their hands and the mouth and everything. So that's part of the ritual for being a Muslim, for the faith. So there is a big Muslim population. That can be one starting point. We also need to approach the Christian and the other faiths, the Buddhist faith. We need to also very carefully link with the faith, create harmony, create innovative financing. Lastly, we need to bring local businesses, and the businesses which are also coming from outside, like from the multinationals, they should own part of the work in local communities. If we localize SDGs and we move to the level of the indicator for that locality, not the SDG, the goal or the target, move to the indicator level, how we are tracking, and that should become part of the political economy. Unless we do that, we will not be successful with WASH, and we will not be successful in changing the integrated water resource management at the river basin or at the local level.
Thank you very much, Professor Khan. And also, I know right now we have really great discussion going on, especially to really find out sort of a consensus and solution to how to manage to this. But right now, due to the sort of a time restraint that we have, I would like to just have one more question to one of our panelists, Dr. Iranio. As a young water expert, how do you think that we can sort of facilitate the involvement of the multi-stakeholders together, especially including the younger generation of women and civil society into these wash and sanitation development?
Great. Thank you for that question, Professor Chen. Actually, I believe that the promotion of water, hygiene, and sanitation or WASH, and development of sustainable water environment is everyone's responsibility, and not just by a specific group or sector. It might sound cliche, but I will always be going down to information dissemination and education as one of the key solutions. As mentioned earlier by many speakers, there are still considerable amount of percentage of population in the world who has no safe access to WASH or access to it in some area, because it is actually very much challenging. I believe that unless everyone is well informed, will there be more emphasis to the promotion of WASH and development of sustainable water environment. Secondly, I actually would like to emphasize that nowadays, with the so-called new normals, there are actually many NGOs and civil organizations that actually offers their solutions or their services as volunteers. So we could actually make use of those things as well. And then thirdly, we could actually encourage our regulators and government officials to support policies focusing on WASH promotion and sustainable water environment. As I would like to add also in addition to what Professor Kan mentioned earlier, actually localizing the global objectives or the SDGs will actually create job opportunities as well to people, right? So if we actually if we localize these targets and give jobs to local people, then we could actually be giving them more opportunities as well. So that would be all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Geronimo. So with that, I know I'm sure all the participants as well as panelists, we want to have more discussion here. But again, due to the time restraint, I think we have to conclude here. Hopefully, I think that this would be a great opportunity for not just the presenters, but all the participants and others to start really considering hard on what would be a great way, the best way to really manage this. I think we've highlighted the importance of the hygiene and WASH, but also in addition to all the other integrated water governments as well too. So I think through more of these kind of sessions and forums, we can collectively start to consider the best solutions to deal with these issues, especially in this post-COVID-19 era. So with that, at the end of this session, we would like to take the photos of everyone. So I'm not sure if we can make some of the participants to show up their faces too, but if you can do that, that would be great. And then I think we're gonna probably do like a screen capture, right? Yeah, we're gonna do a screen capture of the thing. So everyone make sure you smile if you don't wear the mask. And whenever, yeah, you're ready.
All the speakers?
So, okay, all the people who are at the local site, please try to come up to the center, okay? And all the people who are joining in via the Zoom, please, if you can stand in front of the camera, that would be great.
뒤에 타이틀
괜찮아요? 마스크 벗어요? 네, 그러면 마스크 좀 벗어주시고요. 여기 보시면 잠깐만.
엔딩메이트 있으세요? 사회자?
All right, I think with that, we would like to end our session. Thank you, everyone, and thanks to all the presenters one more time and all the audiences. Have a nice day, and yeah, for those of you who are staying up late at the night, have a good night too. Okay, goodbye.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Excellent.
Bye.
Good to see you, Nidal, and
Thank you.
Good to see you, Professor Kan and
Hope to see you there very soon.
Thank you, Professor Jungkwon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
감사합니다.
Thank you very much.